Hi everyone, I'm Steve Burnard from Adobe Systems UK, and what I'd like to do this afternoon is take you through a brief overview of some of the new features of Dreamweaver CC. So let's get cracking. So the first thing I'd like to do is give you an overview of some of the new features inside of Dreamweaver CC, but the first thing to show would be a website, and if we look at this website we can then get a feel of how it's been put together, and then we can backtrack and then start to build this using Dreamweaver. Okay, so here we have a website, and one of the first things to notice about the website is it is actually a responsive website. So if I shrink down my browser, for example, to emulate something like a tablet or a mobile phone, I can do that quite easily, and you can see that the browser is refreshing because it's actually built in a responsive fashion. Okay, shrink this right down and you can see that my menu system is now at the top. Okay, so the basic structure of this website is built around a mobile, tablet and a desktop experience. So let's go into Dreamweaver and let's give you an overview of how we can put this type of content together. Okay, so one of the new features inside of Dreamweaver, let's just start with a new page. Let's go to New. And we're going to go to New Fluid Grid Layouts. And as you can see, Dreamweaver gives you some pre-built assets, and you can override these assets as well. So for example, on the mobile site, we've got 4 columns. You can override this with however many columns you like, and I'll show you why the columns are quite useful in just a second. But you can overwrite these, but we've put in some very nice defaults for you. So I'm just going to work with these defaults, and let's click on Create. And let's just give this a name. Let's call it grid_test. Like all things in life, you've got to give them a test name. Okay, let's just save that file. So what it's done first of all is that has saved my CSS file. What I need to do is also save my HTML file as well. Okay, so part of Dreamweaver's new interface, we've cleaned this up quite a bit compared to the older version, and we've actually taken away a lot of icons that were sitting around and getting in the way. So now what we're left with at the top of the screen, a very simplified user interface where we can just go into Code, Split View Design, and this is the magic button here, this one that says put us into Fluid Grid Layout View. Okay, so I'm going to go into Design Mode, Fluid Grid Layout View, and now we can just start working normally. So what I want to do is select my first div tag. Now, I'm just going to replicate this div just a couple of times, and now let's just start putting in some basic content so you can see how we're building up the basic structure. Okay, so at the top of the screen we're just going to type in Pluralist Outdoor for our Pluralist Outdoor site. At the bottom here we'll just type in Products, and in the middle here we're just going to put in an image. Okay, so let's just insert image. I'm just going to grab in an image, and let's just save what we've done so far. Okay, so where my cursor is now, just on the bottom right hand side, we've got a few icons where we can quickly drop in and out of using our different media queries. So we've assigned a mobile phone, a phone type of media query to begin with. We can also swap to tablet and to desktop. And having this ability to swap live inside of Dreamweaver makes it very, very quick to get up and running building files. So for example, I'm swapping to desktop layout, and you can see on screen that straight away the image that we've brought in, we've defaulted to making this fluid. So as you can see, building websites very, very quick and easy in a fluid fashion. Let's just go to desktop layout and let's show you a few things that we can do here. I'm just going to resize this bottom div, just to make that 2 columns wide. Now there's a couple of ways of working here. I'm just gonna try and show you both ways, but this is the first way, where you can basically just duplicate the div tags that we have given you. So I'm just going to duplicate this div tag, and we're just going to move that up a row. And as we keep duplicating, as you can see, we're just creating new divs. Now, there is another way of doing this, where you might want to have a level of inheritance come through the divs, and I can show you that a little bit later. But essentially, what you can do is, if you create a div tag, you can create your own class here, but insert that as a fluid element. So it goes straight into your fluid grid layouts. That's another way of working. Okay, so let's just show you what's happening in the background. If I go to our mobile size, you can see that the div tags we created, they're not next to each other because I haven't assigned that ability on this particular media query for mobile. I've only assigned that to my desktop experience. Okay, so when we're writing out the CSS, we're doing that in a separate fashion for mobile, tablet and desktop. And let me give you an example of that. If I, let's say for example, we hide this bottom div, which was div tag 8, and we maybe hide div tag 7. They've just been hidden on the mobile side, but they're still visible on the desktop side. Okay, let's just go back to mobile. Let's go to code for 1 second. I want to show you the CSS code that's been written. And the way we've written this is we've actually built this down to be mobile first. So if I scroll down with mobile first, the second media query kicks in, which is for tablet, going down to desktop at the bottom. But if I go back up to mobile, you can see inside the CSS we've got this tag which is display none, which is what I did when I made those div tags invisible. If I just delete them out, they will now render as back to being visible again. So you get the idea where you're visually using the fluid grid interface to create the CSS styles for you, and it's all been written into the CSS page. Okay, so this is a great way to get up and running building pages very quickly. And inside these div tags, you can start to bring in images and do some styling, etc. So let's just take this to the next level. Let's now work on a page that's been built out a bit more, but now we can show you some of the new design features inside of Dreamweaver to help with CSS design. Okay, so let's now go into live mode. I actually don't need the fluid grid layout in the background. I'm just going to turn that off. And what I want to show you is the new CSS Designer Panel. Let's just bring this into play here. So what this does, this gives us the ability to visualize CSS and to apply design onto our selectors, but we can do this in a more visual fashion. It is quite an improvement from the previous version. If I just show you a few screen grabs that I took off the previous version, you get the idea of where it was. We had a panel called CSS Styles, and it was quite difficult to use these styles because it presumed that you knew what visually you were going to aim for in the first place. And that's not always the case. You might want to do a bit of experimentation. So the CSS Styles was very good, but it just threw at you nearly everything that CSS could do, and that really wasn't really helpful. So back to Dreamweaver, and let's show you the new CSS Designer. Now to do that, I'm just going to show you working with some of these fluid grid layouts again. Let's just turn that fluid grid layout back on. I just wanted to show you the second way of working with fluid grids, which is where you could, instead of duplicating each CSS selector, what you can do is you can actually insert your own div, and then you have a level of inheritance built in. So what that looks like here is if I resize one of these fluid grid layouts, turn live off, should make it a little bit quicker. You can see as I resize that fluid grid layout, you can see there's a level of inheritance here, and they've all responded accordingly. So you can work in two different fashions. It's really up to you how you want to work, but the idea here is the fluid grid layouts can actually be responsive to both. Okay, what I want to do is I want to take this this jackets part of this layout. I'm just going to duplicate that. Now I'm doing it this way just to, it's easy to visualize what's actually happening. So I've just duplicated this, and let's just make a slight change here. So let's just change the image, for example, and let's just now change this text. And now what we can do is if I just turn live preview back on, it's worth mentioning that this live preview is using the WebKit rendering engine. And a nice little shortcut that I like to use is inside of Dreamweaver, I'll use the WebKit rendering engine. And I've set as my preview, I've set Firefox up as my main preview. And that's purely because Firefox has got a different rendering engine. So it's easy for me to swap between the two to get a good little preview on the fly. Okay, what I want to do is I want to just go into inspect mode, select my chairs, and let's just describe a little bit about the CSS Designer Panel. What we have first of all is we can see the sources of CSS that we're working on. And here, if you wanted to add one, you can just very quickly add, and away you go. We can also see what media queries we're working on as well. This can be quite useful if you wanted to maybe swap into a different style, see some styles applied on maybe a mobile, and then you can get a heads up as you want to take that from mobile onto your desktop, for example. So you can swap here on the sources panel between what layouts or what media query you're using. And of course you can add them here as well. Now what's quite clever is the selectors, this part underneath, let's just refresh this a little bit. I'm just going to resize this so it's easier to work with. This is giving me an overview of what selectors are available to me, but also where it says computed, it's what's being used at the current period in time. So if I go to inspect, I'm going to select my chairs, and computed, under the properties on the right hand side, it's now giving me everything that's being used. Okay, so let's just do something very quick, something visual so you get the idea of what's happening here. Let's maybe change the background color. Let's maybe change this to be something more of a blue, for example. And there you can see straight away it's blue. Now the reason why jackets and chairs are both blue is that I duplicated the jackets part of my fluid grid layout, just so it's easier to visualize on screen here. It's good for demo purposes anyway. Okay, so maybe we want to make another change, which will be something like background hover color. So let's just go in here, maybe change that to a different level of green. And now as I mouse over, you can see there's my change happening straight away. Okay, other things that we can do here, if we scroll down the properties, you can see all the properties that have been applied so far. And maybe what I want to do is change something. So let's maybe change the border radius. Now what's great about this is working in tandem with the WebKit engine is we get these live previews. So for example, if I, let's just lock all the four corner radiuses together, and let's just make a change. Okay, so from 0 corner radius, let's just start kicking in a bit more of a radius. Let's just do that a bit more. Okay. What's also quite useful from a design point of view is I can take off the enable all properties and just work on individual corners on their own. So you can do some nice little clever effects like this. It's a very, very quick and easy way for designers to get up and running because you're working on the CSS in the background. Okay, a few more things we can do here. Let's just maybe, if I wanted to make quite a big change, say for example, let's just go to inspect. I want to select this again. And what I want to change is, let's now work on some text. I think let's work on some text. So at the top of the screen here where it says pluralist, I'm going to select that text and on the right hand side you can see that it says underneath selectors what's being computed. Okay, so I'm just going to make a few changes here. So for example, so when you click on computed, it's throwing at you what's available. But what I want to do is I actually want to override a property and make a change. So instead of changing something that's already existing, I want to create my own properties. So to do that, I do have to select the selector, and then my properties panel on the right hand side will actually expand out and show me a few different options. So for example, if I go to text, let's just maybe apply a shadow, and let's just make that 4 pixels. Now you're not going to see anything straight away because I've applied the 4 pixels shadow. What I haven't done is told it what color to use. So just for visual purposes, I'm just going to put in a red, just so you can visualize this on the screen more than anything else. I'll change it to a better color a little bit later. But just for visualization purposes, you can see we've got this shadow kicking in, and we can apply a blur to this, for example. Okay, happy with that. No, let's change the color. And away we go. Okay, so you can see it's very easy to apply transforms. So instead of overriding an existing one, we can apply one very, very quickly. Okay, so let's maybe do some more work. What I want to do here is I maybe want to change the actual size, for example. Let's just maybe go up and, in fact, I'm going to work on a different font. Let's go up back into inspect. And I just want to select this text that says gear up. So what I'd like to do now is show you as part of the CSS Designer Panel, we have another new feature which enables us to work with web fonts very, very quickly. So for example, under the font family that we're using here in my properties inspector, my properties for my CSS Designer, this is where we can come in and start to manage fonts. If I click on manage fonts, these are the Adobe Edge fonts that are kicking in, and I've got a few previously selected, they're ready for me. If I now click on Gravitas, let's add a new font, Gravitas. Okay, so these are all fonts that are being pulled in from the Edge service. If I wanted to, I can create custom font stacks using built-in fonts. So as any good designer will tell you, you must use Comic Sans. So that's now available to me as part of my library of fonts that's on my desktop machine. And we can build out font families very, very quick and easily. One thing I will mention here, as part of the Creative Cloud membership, you'll have access to the Typekit library as well. And the Typekit library will give you a few advantages here. One of them, if we just go into the Creative Cloud, now this should be coming live very soon on your Creative Cloud memberships, but it is the ability to use Typekit fonts but they will be installed in your desktop machine. So the idea there is you can create fonts, or you can select fonts, and they're available to be used as a typekit service to be put inside of your website, but it's also available to be used inside your applications as well. So if you're creating printed matter, for example, you have some consistency between what's going onto the website and what's going onto your printed matter. So a slight difference when using typekit fonts, but it does give you that ability to have a desktop as well as websites using the same fonts. Okay, just a quick explanation there, but I'm just going to use some fonts here. I've added some font families into my font management system, and now I can very quickly use one of those fonts. Okay, it just takes a few seconds to kick in, and away we go. Okay. And you can see just adjusting the properties, we can adjust the size, etc. Okay, so that's just a quick overview of the CSS Designer and also the Web Fonts collection. Let's now talk about a few extra features as part of Dreamweaver. Okay, let's just scroll down here. So here we have an image. Now, to make websites a bit more exciting, a bit more eye candy, to actually catch your customers' attention, it's a good idea to put inside of your mobile, your tablet and your desktop experience some animated features. Now traditionally we would have used Flash to do this, and we can still carry on using Flash because Flash has the ability to export as HTML5, so that can certainly be done. What I wanted to show you was another way of working, which is using our very own Edge Animate. Edge Animate is our tool to create animations using the jQuery engine, so it's pure HTML5 with CSS, etc. And what I wanted to do is just show you the workflow that's involved. Okay, so inside of Edge Animate, you've got a timeline here to create animations over time, so you can see we've got different elements popping in. We've got a timeline very similar to Flash. On the timeline we can put on keyframes, we can put in easing, we can put in properties for the object, etc. Once you've created your animation, what we can do from here is just go to Publish Settings, and we can publish as what we call a deployment package. What that is basically a zip file. So everything inside of our animation, so the graphics, the JavaScript, the HTML, etc., is all packaged up as a zip file. Now this is really good for workflows because it can mean the person doing the animation could be the different person than the person doing the Dreamweaver work, the building of the website. So we just publish out here from Animate. And then what we can do is inside of Dreamweaver, we can just insert that package. Instead of taking in the individual elements, we can just bring in the package and let Dreamweaver do all the work for us. So underneath the Insert menu, or the Insert panel, I should say, we can say bring in an Edge Animate composition. And we just need to find our published Edge Animate. So where is it? Animate, publish. Here's our package that's been published out. We can just need to click on that, and away we go. Okay, and there's the animation kicking in. Okay, great stuff. Now let's carry on working here. One of the things I should have shown was, as part of building this website, there's a couple of parts of the website which are quite useful. So for example, we have a shopping cart where we have this little UI element open up telling us about our shopping cart. We also have a form we can fill in to join the pluralist mailing list, etc. So various levels of interactivity. Now you can see these pop up, they're very nicely designed. They're modal as well, so they come in and they take away the rest of the HTML so you can concentrate on the form. Now, building those types of modal assets is actually very, very quick and easy inside of a Dreamweaver as well. So let's give you a quick example of that. Okay, let's go to Files. Let's open up a file. Okay, let's work on this cart object. Okay, so what we have is an on-click. Click on the cart text and you have an on-click event that's going to kick in, and we're going to use that to bring in a user interface element, which is our little message. So if I just go to the Insert menu, I'm going to go to jQuery UI because we have these UI elements and they're pre-built using the jQuery framework, which makes it very, very easy to work with. And what we've done with Dreamweaver is we've actually built a nice Dreamweaver wrapper around this framework. So it's easy to get to grips with very, very quickly. So it's a combination of things. So first of all, I'm just going to put in my dialog box. And what happens on the bottom of the screen is our Properties Inspector, which has also been cleaned up as well for Dreamweaver CC. Our Properties Inspector refreshes and gives us all the properties we can apply to this particular dialog box. So for example, what do we want to do here? Do we want to make this draggable? Let's say no. Auto open, no. But maybe we will have this modal. And let's just take this text and put in something relevant like your cart is empty. Okay. Okay, as you can see, very, very quick and easy to do. Okay, let's move swiftly on. Let's just now show you a few more things. So working on that principle, but this time working with HTML5 forms. Okay, so here we have our HTML5 form, and I just want to put in a few new dialogues to help us with things like email and telephone, etc. Now what's quite useful here is that because we're using jQuery, jQuery will put in a lot of the pre-built elements for us. So for example, if you wanted to make sure you have validation, for example, the JavaScript for the validation is automatically as part of the jQuery framework. So for example, let's just carry on working here. What I'm going to do is just put in, go to Insert, let's go to Forms, and underneath our Form menu we can now see the whole list of elements we can put in as part of our HTML5 form. What I want to put in here is basically a email. Let's put in email. Now again, a little something that might catch your eye is when I put in the input type as email, my Properties Inspector, you might need to refresh. And sometimes you might have to put the cursor inside the actual tag itself. So if I put this inside input type, for example, it will refresh to give me the properties for that email tag in the form. Okay, so let's now put in some properties. So for example, let's give this a name, user email. Let's say it's going to be required, for example, and You can put in a pattern, so it's got to be something at something.co.uk or com, for example, just a little hint of a pattern. What we also need to do is put in a label as well. Let's just put in a very quick label. And we'll just put in that label as email. And let's do the same again for telephone. Let's just put in telephone, refresh the properties inspector to give us our properties. And let's just put in the required elements. Okay, so pattern could be +44. Okay, and there we go. As you can see, as I'm doing this, on the right-hand side, the WebKit engine inside of Dreamweaver is giving us this visual feedback as well. Let's just put in a label. Okay, there we go. Let's go to design. Now let's just save this out. Call that test again. And now we can preview this live inside of Dreamweaver. So we've got the WebKit engine, and we can also preview this inside of, as I choose to do, inside of Firefox, because that's actually quite a useful way of working. Okay. Right, let's change gear a little bit now. Let's still on the HTML5 thread, but we're going to take one of our pages and add in some HTML5 video. Another very nice feature of part of Dreamweaver CC is when we're importing video, some of the properties we can apply very quickly would be around using the video tag as part of HTML5. So, for example, let's just open up a page we're going to work on. Okay, so you can see what we have here. We have a graphic in place. I'm going to swap this out and turn this into a piece of video to play. So to do that, let's just go into split mode. I'm just going to remove that image to begin with. And let's just now put in place, underneath media, let's put in HTML5 video. Now there's some very clever things that are going to be going on here. In my properties inspector, we can do things like, first of all, let's just select the source of the video. And the video we're bringing in is an MP4 file. You can see also in this video directory, we've got a couple of different formats of video. We've got an OGV file and a WebM. And this is quite important because if I just select the MP4 to begin with, in my properties inspector, we can put in alternative video file formats as well. So it's good fallback to have. Okay, we just need to put in a poster image, I should say. Okay, and away we go. I'm just going to put on muted. So it defaults to muted, just for demo purposes, but now that should be available to play directly inside of Dreamweaver. And again, it's worth mentioning, if I just save this file, if I preview this in Firefox, you can see how the controls in Firefox could be slightly different because it could be kicking in a different codec for playing back that video. Okay. Right, that's pretty good. Let's carry on working. let's just show you a few more things. I just wanted to open up that page again. As part of our pluralist site, one of the things that we have also part of this page is something called CSS Transition. So it's just a little bit of visual eye candy, but it's great because it helps customers when they're going to your websites to see what they're selecting. They get a little visual clue. So for example, in this example, as we mouse over camping tips, you can see the text just comes out at you a bit more. So that's something called a transition. It's all done using CSS, so it's very quick to render. And to do that, we have a panel inside of Dreamweaver called CSS Transitions. Now, it can be a bit difficult to learn how to get to grips with, but hopefully this little demo will put you on the right path. Okay, so let's just take our camping tips text. And what we want to do is we want to address this class jump pad link title. That's what you've got to remember, jump pad link title. We want to select that and apply the transitions to that particular class. So to do that, we need to have CSS transitions. Let's just bring that panel into play. And what I want to do is create a new transition on top of that jump pad link class. Okay, so let's just find jump pad link title. There we are. So now I've selected my particular class. What I want to do now is say, what do I want to actually happen? So I'm going to say, for example, let's go to hover. So on hover, we want to apply some sort of property. So what we're going to do is, first of all, say, is there going to be a duration? And I'm going to say 0.3 seconds. As you can see from the drop-down menu here, you can apply it in different ways. I'm going to say 0.3 seconds, delay, 0 delay, so it's going to kick in straight away. And what's going to happen is we're going to have a little bit of an easing. So what will happen is the text will ease into place. Now, what is going to happen, that is what will happen, but what is the property we're going to apply? Let's now put this in. So what we need to do is we want to change the colors. So it starts off as being black background, and we want to change that to white. So on hover, it goes from black to white. So we can do this very quickly, and we can also, if we're using I'll just zoom in here very quickly. We're setting the property of RGBA. The A part is the alpha channel, and we can say, for example, let's just make that an alpha channel value of 0.7, for example, to get that little bit of translucency. Okay, that's the N value. Let's now also put in the color, the text color, which will actually be originally white. We're going to change it to black. And the last thing we're going to do is a little transform. And that transform is just going to be a scale. So it's just going to scale up very slightly, just to give you that visualization that it's coming out at you. Okay, let's just now create that transition. And now if we go to design mode, let's go to live. Live should be turned on. And there we can see there's our hover kicking in. Okay, pretty straightforward stuff. Right, let's move swiftly on. Let's now talk about building mobile apps. So far we've been building websites which have been fluid. So we got the mobile, the tablet, and the desktop experience. But now let's talk about building mobile apps. So again, using the jQuery engine, let's just maybe close that page down so I can start on a clean page. Okay, let's hide those panels away, and let's now create a mobile app. Okay, let's go to new and let's go to our starter templates. Okay, jQuery mobile, let's go to create. Now straight away we can just say let's click on live view so we can test this live, and again click on mobile media query so we can actually just kick in working and designing straight away with mobile. So let me show you some of the things that we can do here. Let's go to page 2 and let's maybe put in some new content, so we can just use our insert menu. And underneath jQuery mobile, you can see here quite a lot of elements we can put into our mobile application. So for example, layout grids, you can have objects on a page laid out very nicely. On your app, I should say, we can put in text, password areas, checkboxes, buttons, sliders. Let's just put in a couple of items here. Let's just say, for example, stuff goes here. And let's just maybe put in some content. So for example, let's put in, let's just put in some checkboxes. 5 checkboxes, vertical, click OK, and away you go. So as you can see, very, very quick and easy to do. And this is how you can build up your apps very, very quickly. Now, the framework that jQuery gives you, you have a few options to change the visual layout. So what we can do here is we can maybe select an element, and if we go up to our jQuery mobile swatches, save your document first. So let's just save this as mobile app test. Okay. Let's just now refresh. So what we can do is we can now start to change the swatches that are used on this mobile app, because we have some built-in, as part of the framework of jQuery, you have some built-in themes that you can work with, as you can see, kicking in straight away. Now, if you want to create your own themes, you want to have your own color schemes, etc. If I click on Get More Themes, what we have is the jQuery theme roller, where we can very quickly start to drag and drop elements to build out some color schemes that we really like, or don't, as you can see from here. That's pretty horrid, but it'll certainly get someone's attention. But what's really, really useful, and what I like about this, is the ability to combine this with Cooler, Adobe Cooler. So what will happen here is you can do a search inside of Cooler and bring in some color swatches. So if you have some swatches uploaded into Cooler, you could bring them in here very, very quickly. Okay, right then. So integration with Adobe Cooler from jQuery's theme roller site is quite a great thing to say. And also Cooler is part of your subscription package as part of Creative Cloud. Okay, so to package this up, we could now go one stage further and build this out as an application using our PhoneGap service. Okay, so I've got something pre-compiled, so let's just open that up. Okay, so here we have an application built using that method I've just described. You use your jQuery framework engine, you build in some layouts, you put in some backgrounds, and now we can do things like, let's go to Cookout, let's choose something on Open Fire, let's go to Fish, see all recipes, and away we go. So you get the idea. It's a nice little application that's been built here. Now to package this up, we can do this with our PhoneGap build service. Now, 2 ways of doing this. You could wrap all this up as a zip file, or you can publish directly from Dreamweaver. Okay, so I'm not going to go through this all now because we have different sessions dedicated to PhoneGap Build, but you get the idea how Dreamweaver is integrated as part of PhoneGap Build. Okay, very quick and easy to do. Right, I've almost out of time. There's one final thing to show. This is not a new feature, but it's something I get asked probably more than anything else. So I just wanted to show integration of Photoshop with Dreamweaver. I think this is quite important to show because there's a lot of misconceptions about how you take images, bring them in, having to pre-do them as JPEGs, save out, test them, etc. When we do actually have a very good link between Dreamweaver and Photoshop. So I want to show you that very, very quickly now. It's not a new feature, but because not many people know this can be done, think of it as a new feature. Okay, so let's just close that tab away for 1 second. Okay, so here I've got an image that's been placed in, which is it's a JPEG file. And I just want to show that the dimensions of this image. It's 640 by 960. So it's a JPEG 640 960. And what we have is we have this image linked to the high-res original inside of Photoshop. So what we can do here is we can just say, click on Edit, and what will happen is Dreamweaver will open up the Photoshop file, not the JPEG. It will go from the JPEG file to the Photoshop file opens up, and now we can do all our glorious good design work inside of Photoshop. Have access to things like layers, colors, smart filters, etc. Let's just do a quick color change here. If I save that Photoshop file, and it's worth showing image size as well. This is actually a high-res image, 3744 by 5616. So we're working on the high-res file, 60 megabytes in terms of size. Okay, let's close that down. Let's go back to Dreamweaver. Now, Dreamweaver, there's a little tag on the top left telling me, hold on, something's changed. So if I just ask Dreamweaver to refresh that, it will go to the original Photoshop file and it will pull out a JPEG from that photo file. So we're back into Dreamweaver with the correct level of JPEG file, and as you can see, it's kept the correct dimensions as well. Okay, so that's just a little thing to end on, which is just the integration of Dreamweaver with Photoshop. So finally, I'd just like to say thank you for joining us this afternoon. We do appreciate your time away from your desk, etc., to join us. And we're going to open up this session now for any questions that you may have regarding Dreamweaver CC. Thank you very much.